All right, Twitch say hi to YouTube. YouTube say hi to Twitch. We back and let's go. We got the Ruy Lopez Caruanas, Fabiano Caruanas, Ruy Lopez here on Forward Chess. You guys can definitely get this yourself too as well. You can use Command Roy in the chat, and if you watch it from YouTube, then obviously we have the description there for you guys to cop it here. 50% off this book through June. All right, so we're going to cover a few chapters. We're not going to do obviously the full book because you would have to buy it for that. We're going to cover, I picked out some chapters like hand-picked chapters that are like, most played. So we're looking at this from obviously white side here. So after e4, I mean, you can also look at it from black side too as well, but this is, Ruy Lopez from the white side. So here we go with the Chagoran variation. This one's played a lot at a higher level. Yeah, I've seen this so many times. I actually played this from both sides, white and black myself. So definitely wanted to start with the Chagoran variation here. It covers everything, obviously. Lots of things here. Lots of chapters, covers everything in the Ruy. Forward Chess is a book or an app that I use a lot, to believe it or not. I have many books here, which I'll maybe show you guys on another day, but today we're looking at Ruy Lopez. Okay, e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, and bishop b5, a6, right? a6 is the usual, bishop a4. We're going to read this text here, and we're going to go through this chapter. Knight f6, castles, bishop b7, rook e1, b5. This is always normal stuff. Bishop b3, d6, c3, castles, h3. We'll look at that one more time, right? Just to slow it down. e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, Ruy Lopez a6 is your usual move. We go bishop a4 to back it up. Knight f6, we castle. Bishop e7, rook e1, which defends the e4 pawn. b5 play, we back up with bishop b3, d6, c3, castles, and h3. This happens a lot, so many times. This is a tibia, is in a way. You can have the Breyer variation, which goes knight back to b8. Chagoran goes knight a5. I used to play this all the time. This knight a5. Line from the black pieces, and then I used to play knight b8. So you can play it from both sides. The Ruy is a nice opening. I used to play knight a5. I tried knight b8. I've done bishop b7, right? Like I've done a lot of moves here, and it is playable from both sides. Now in this book with Fabi, we're going to take a look at this. So it says, now we come to the main lines. The reason I am recommending a4 here right now, a4 here. Oh wow, he recommends C. He's saying he's recommending a4. Wow, against the classical variation, but this is classical. Is it fits in our anti-martial repertoire. If you are a Ruy Lopez player with white, then you should experiment with different lines. That is important. White can try d4, bishop g4, which is considered to be decent for black, but from a theoretical point of view, I think h3 offers more chess and more chances to play for an advantage. That's nice. So he does recommend h3 right here. You can also play 8a4, is what he was saying. Instead of c3, you can play a4, which I've seen him play actually recently. But h3 is standard stuff. All right, perfect. So we're here in the chapter. After all of these moves, we in the Chagoran variation here. And then after that, knight a5. Boom, knight a5. Okay, so knight a5 hits the bishop on b3. And bishop c2, we back it up. This is usual stuff. Bishop c2 and then c5. From both sides, this can be played. I'm not even gonna lie. You can play this if you like the Ruy. From the black side too, then you can play this as well with the knight a5, starting with this, the Chagoran variation, and then you get space, c5, right? c5, let's flip the board. We're looking at it from white's point of view, and d4 happens from white. I used to play this all the time, literally from both sides. Let's see what he says. We have seen this sort of position already. Black kicks the bishop back and then grabs space in the center. The disadvantage are that his knight on a5 is misplaced, and white is given the chance to play d2, d4, which white should do for sure. A lot of tension arises with big decisions awaiting both players when it comes to finding the best ways to proceed. Mikhail Chagoran's variation is a tough nut to crack. It has been around a long time, since the turn of the 20th century. In fact, now black has slightly difficult decisions to make. e5 is hanging. So this pawn is currently hanging. D takes e5. He doesn't want to give it up the center just by trading pawns after c takes d4, c takes, e takes, knight takes d4. Because this will happen, so you want to take a look at it. White with an e4 pawn against black's d6 pawn has a certain advantage, especially as black's knight is still out of the game on a5. So if you ever see this, it's very nice. You read, you understand. If you ever get this type of position, you know that you're already better due to what he said in the book. Let's go back to the main, d4, and then scroll back. Okay, all right. If black defends with e5 with knight back to c6, which I actually played this a lot, but you play d5. And black is getting kicked around too much. For example, knight b8, just look how many moves he spent with the knight just to get it back to the starting square. It's far too many. White will play a4 with threats. Wow. Already advantages here for you guys in the chat. That's fire right there. c5 after d4. All right. Knight d7 is formerly a popular line, which is considered a bit dubious these days, for example, for multiple reasons. d5, which is similar to the lines with queen c7. Knight bd2 is very sharp because black can go to Benoni type position, which takes, knight c6. d5, knight c to e. Knight takes e5, knight takes, I think this theory is going at 4, a4. Talk about being prepped. Rook b8, knight g6. This is normal for me, but I'm just showing you guys like how deep this can go. And obviously you can go over this many times. Make sure you get Forward Chess, the app, and obviously you can get this book too as well. Again, with command Roy in the Twitch chat and in the description of YouTube. And the problem for black is f4, f5 is a huge threat. All right, perfect. So let me go back a little bit here to where we were. So he's looking at, the queen c7 is a move too as well. Queen c7 is the most common. This is what I used to play from both sides. I would go knight a5, I would go c5. Like if I'm playing black here and I face the Roy, I would do it every time. I would do everything we've done here, knight a5 and queen c7. I would always go this way, always. And then from white, I always feel like I had an advantage. But when I was playing black, and that's how it is in chess, you feel better, right? You can play from both sides. So, all right, this is the main move. It's a natural way to defend e5. This pawn that was hanging on e5. While keeping the king's knight on a good square f6 rather than the awkward square d7. The most common way to play here is knight b to d2. Develop. C takes, knight c6, b5. Knight b4, bishop b1, a5, a3. And I know all of this. This is so crazy. Now, knight a6 I had to play. And I always had a problem. When I flipped this, this is like really going back into the files. I flipped this and I always had a problem with this knight and I'm going back to c5 in many cases. I remember playing this very deeply, but you can play it from both sides, guys. It's really cool to see. 96 and then b4. But this has a huge amount of theory. Yeah, okay, right. Absolutely. So, in fact, after queen c7, instead of going knight b to d2, which can be played, he recommends d5. A natural move. You get a King's Indian structure where black has already advanced the queenside pawns. This is both a plus and a minus. On the plus side, black has more space and doesn't have to deal with the standard King's Indian advance of the b4 stuff, c4, right, stuff like that, and c5. On the other hand, his structure is vulnerable to a4, which is going to attack these pawns on the queen side. The main problem is the knight on a5. Look how gross it is. You have to go b7. What's funny is I remember having positions like this, flipping again, knight b7, and having to figure out where to put this knight at later on. Knight c4 was a move, knight b6. Like you're really moving this knight so much because it is on the rim. It is a problem having it back there. All right. It is considered that black should bring the knight back immediately. If instead he makes another move like bishop d7, for example, we can play b3 and the knight has nowhere good to go because knight c4 is not a move, obviously. Sometimes it goes a5, b8, sorry, b7, d8, f7. Yeah, I've done that before. But this is a long journey. And f7 doesn't look like an amazing piece. This is a model game that you can check out. Topalov, Ivanchuk, Sofia 2009. Literally copy that. Put that in Google. You'll be able to find it. You can check the rest of the game here. C4 happened eventually, it looks like. Bishop a3. If b4, then knight b7, a4. There's a possibility, but they're looking at this line too as well. C4, bishop a3. Always click everything, right? You want to see, just to see it. You may not remember it, but a lot of times seeing it is you can get ideas. Knight takes d5. This is a nice tactic. So back to this line here. Bishop a3, bishop d8. Knight b to d, knight e8, bishop b4, c takes b3, a takes, knight b7. Whoa, this is the rest of the game. Yeah, definitely, you guys can look at this yourself. They're showing the whole game, 44 moves out, obviously here. But you can go back and then look at the main move, which was d5. After d5, knight c4. Most popular move. Makes sense. You want to put the knight back on b6. Knight b7 is just not that appealing, to be honest. b3, knight back to b6. Black's knight is still a target and will be kicked away with a4 and a5. So we play a4. Bishop d7 happens. We go a5. We kick the knight away. If he takes instead of bishop d7, takes, then we have takes. They play a5, knight a3, which makes a hole on b5. Bishop d7 and rook b1, and we deal with the b file with knight to b5 as well. So going back to the game, right? And if you forget where you're at, it's always important to, you can start over, right? This is how I read books. In fact, I've read books many ways like this. Of course, if you forget, go back to the beginning. E4, E5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, Roy. A6, bishop a4, knight f6, castles, bishop e7. All theory here. Rook e1, b5, and this is very common. Happens all the time. d6, c3, h3. Just click that one, h3. Knight a5, bishop c2, c5, d4, queen c7, d5, main move. Knight c4, b3, knight b6, a4. And then we're back to where we were. Bishop d7, main move. Very natural, connecting the rooks. Connecting the rooks. a5, knight c8. Knight still looking very strange here. And then c4 is the best move here. At this point, white can no longer make progress on the queen side, but it's still possible to make progress on the king side. We can do this because black has problems with his rather awkwardly placed pieces, and it will take time to readjust them in a way that will improve his coordination. That's deep. That's very deep, Chad. Did you hear that? Like, bro, you have to read. That's fire, bro. You have to read. Literally read, right? I'm telling you, bro. Always read your books. And then read them multiple times. But very nice. So he's looking at c4. You can obviously look at this whole game here. I like to follow what the main move is. But you can also come back and like maybe the second time reading the book, go through this or go through it immediately. Like if I have more time, I'm going to go through it immediately. All right, I guess one reason for preferring b3, c4 is to protect a5. Therefore, freeing my rook on a1 for action on the queen side. c3, c4, on the other hand, gives added support to the d5 pawn, which can be useful later on if black tries to free himself with f7, f5 at some point. Okay, with c4, 16, white defends d5 again in case the e-pawn ever gets traded off. It's really good. c4 defends d5 if e4 ever gets traded off. It's very nice. The queen's knight also has access to c3. So I can go knight c3. Maybe one day the bishop can use a1, ah diagonal if we play f2, f4, for example. g6 played. I've seen this a lot. This is like moving the rook, bishop f8, bishop g7, something like that. Knight c3, knight h5, knight e2, rook e8. Rook a2. Oh, did you see this a lot? This is a cool move. Rook a2, bishop f8. This move like is just getting off the dark squares when you play bishop b2. You also are like helping on the second rank. You see this a lot in the Italian game. g4. Whoa, that's a sick move. A recurring theme. White increases his attacking chances against the black king. Knight g7, knight g3, f6. You know what's funny? From black side, I've had this type of position before, where like you're very cramped and you're trying to break the right moment. And this is why the Chagoran variation, if you ever see this, you know, this early knight a5, it is good to know, you know, what you can actually do. And I remember playing this from the black side and being very cramped and not liking it. And Caruana is showing you here in this book, basically like how cramped this is for black's standpoint, how easy it is to kind of make mistakes. All right, f6, knight h2, nice move here, setting up f2, f4, while g5 makes a gaping hole on f5. Knight h2, rook e7, h4, rook f7, f4, we take those. Black cannot allow the pawn roller of f4, f5, so our threat was actually going back. f4, f5, g4, and h5. Wow, sheesh. Okay, so f4 he takes, bishop takes, queen d8, rook f1, queen e7, h5, knight e8. Bishop d3. Like how it activates the rook here. With black being so cramped, it is easy for white to find moves to steadily increase the pressure. This is more of an improving move. So you want to improve as much as you can, which is nice. Bishop d3 just improves, you know, the bishop. The rook can now access the second rank. Bishop g7, king g2. That's interesting. I would have thought rook g2. Queen f8, queen c1. B takes c4. All right, this is move 30. And then they have a few more moves here. Oh my goodness, this goes so far. Make sure you go over this many times. Black is desperately fishing for counterplay, but it's very hard for him to achieve anything. B takes c4, rook b8. Rook a f2, just improving. Rook to b3. Rook f3, defending the bishop. Knight e7, bishop d2. Now we open up the file there. Bishop c8, queen c2. Rook b8, black's quest for counterplay has not been successful. King h1, g8 takes h5. It's very difficult for black to defend. It is easy to criticize a move like this, but alternatives are few and far between. Knight takes, knight g6. Black is desperately trying to get the knight to e5 right here. And then, whoa, e5, bro. Bruh. Wow. That's a sick move. e5, perfectly timed. It says d takes e5. Now, obviously, before I go forward, I always like to look at the text in between. If knight takes, there was bishop takes h7, king h8, and rook h3, and white will win. Okay, so we go back to the game move. b takes e5, bishop takes, h takes, queen takes, e4. Hitting the rook, we go rook h3, rook fb7. The desperate f5 doesn't work due to knight takes g7, takes, queen h5, knight f6, queen check, king f7. Queen takes, and bishop h6, and white is crushing. So back to the game after rook h3, rook fb7, knight f4, rook b1, queen h7 check, king f7 check, and knight g6. Beautiful. This was Topalov-Shirov back in 2004. After queen d6, bishop f4 is coming next. So obviously this was 45 moves, my guy. Bruh. Wow, that was a long, obviously, chapter. And we're going to do a few chapters as well. This is a 5-part series. We're going to go cover like 5 chapters out of, 18 here in this book from, obviously, Fabiano Caruana's Ruy Lopez. Very strong book. It's still played today, a lot of this stuff. But this one right here is the Chagoran. I've actually played this a lot. I'm not even going to lie. I have played this many times. It starts from classical main lines in introduction, but e4, e5, knight f3. Both sides I played this, and as I got better, I remember actually realizing that this right here, h3 after this, for black, knight a5, this is not the way anymore. You still can play it, but you are going to be forced to be cramped if you know what to do. And it's definitely shown here. After bishop c5, bishop c2, you go c5 and d5 quite quickly. And you just kind of cramp them. You play against this knight, you have a better position. Good to know. So this is chapter 3 out of this book with Caruana's Ruy Lopez, guys. Make sure you guys get it in the description on YouTube and on Twitch here. You can use command Roy. Perfect. Subscribe to the YouTube. We'll see you guys on part 2.